Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a panel discussion which will put the spotlight on the art and science of selecting the right HR tech solutions and enablement partners. Please help me in welcoming our distinguished panel on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Chief Human Resources Officer, Corporate Raymond Limited. Please put your hands together for Adhir. Please welcome Customer Care Associate and Deputy Vice President HR Shoppers Stop Limited, Aniruddha Mahajan. She is Vice President People Third Wave Coffee. Please welcome Diya Suri. A warm welcome to Chief HR Officer Landmark Group India, Harsh Aparanji. Let's make some noise for the Vice President HR Platforms and Systems, Reliance Retail Limited, Raghvendra D. Singh. She is AVP Human Capital at Lenskart.com. Let's welcome Seema Arora. And ladies and gentlemen, to moderate the session, we've got Chief Executive Officer, Talavvy Business Catalysts, Chairman HONO. Please welcome Rajesh Padmanabhan. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got a packed panel. Please put your hands together in a collective welcome to the entire panel on stage as I hand over to our moderator, Mr. Rajesh Padmanabhan.
Morning, everyone. And thank you so much. A lovely panel, a very distinguished panel. And we are a large panel, so obviously it's going to be tough. And all of them want to speak on a lot of topics, so brace yourself. We're going to have some engaging conversation. So before I, put the panel through the entire session, a few opening thoughts. I've been on the industry, now I'm on the consulting and on the other side. So seen the world on both sides, have a little bit of pros and cons of how do you go about it. Not that everything is, perfectly right in terms of what I say, but I'm just sharing some of the experiences. We did see in the opening session when Swami did speak about a very structured process, practice, the people part of it and the policies, how do you really go about it? And I'm trying to use some of those in this particular session. That's number one. So when you're backing and when you have an enterprise behind you, you obviously have all of that. The cons, I think there could be bureaucracy, there could be a humongous amount of weight that you come under, and many a times you lose your identity in this world of technology. You don't know what you're chasing. You wonder whether you're really keeping up to, being in time or really wanting to be ahead, etc., etc. There's a lot of challenge here. I think I would start with saying something that there's no right or wrong. I think the courage is to be there, pick up the thread at whatever stage you're in. But I think it's, absolutely the truth that tech is the common denominator. If I were to look at it from the other side, particularly from the vendor or the partner side, I think what we see from an industry standpoint, I think since we deal with a lot of clients, what we see is tech's readiness is way ahead of the industry. So many a times there are a lot of products which are possibly not even be ready to be absorbed in the industry, but that's the pace at which it's going. And I actually put it through a very simple kind of a graph to make it very understand. What I say is tech is growing this way. It's absolutely vertical. It's very linear. The businesses are going through ups and downs. You will have various amount of transformations and disruptions and cyclicalities. And people part of it will go through where ambitiously people want to go up a curve like this, but capabilities will always be maybe about 30% lower than where you are. Now, welcome to this world where you're trying to be and challenge and navigate the space of people in a complex situation like this. Tech is definitely going to help, but what are some of the stuff? So the con that I would say from the tech partners, which is our own learning as well, is many a times the applicability at the industry level is possibly not understood. So I would always encourage you guys to always select partners who understand, may not understand your businesses in detail, but do they understand the value chain of the business? I think those are some of the opening comments on both sides. just to balance it out, yeah. But, we're going to have some lively conversation. We're not going to go around talking each of the points because it's a large panel. Then, at the end of it, we'll possibly cover only 2 or 3 points. Instead, we will try and take maybe a topic, maybe, one of you open the topic and then maybe one of you build on it. And if there's someone who wants to add maybe a 30 seconds or a 20 seconds kind of view, not a compulsion, do that. Otherwise, hold yourself back. And of course, amongst us, we have spoken that we will avoid duplication. So all the points that will come out hopefully will be distinct. So with that, we're all set. Yeah. So Adhir, I'm going to turn to you for the first question. How do you really ascertain the real need of an HR tech solution or a partner? Is there a process that you rely on? What is the starting point?
Good morning. I think thanks, Rajesh, for actually inviting me. It's a tough one. Really, it is born out of experience. I don't know there's a textbook model, but I typically understand is that, first of all, as an HR person, as HR partner to businesses, where are we heading towards from a strategy standpoint of a business? And what is my tech, therefore, going to do to help to drive that particular aspect is very important. And most of the times, when my experience, what we have seen is that there's no alignment on the tech that we take where the business is heading, what kind of stage of growth the business is in, and therefore, the solutions are not necessarily going to be centric to businesses, not centric to driving and enhancing the strategy of the business, therefore. So that's the starting point, I would say, and therefore, the important aspect is how is the executive team of the business is actually aligned to kind of tech, HR tech, so to speak. And that's a very key buying process that you need to and ought to have, because if in HR only for HR, I think it's surely a doomsday and going to be a big failure. The other part is the aspect of how to actually look at from an user experience and adaptability, etc. I mean, look at vendors whose systems are user-friendly and actually be adaptable. The adaptability percentage in any particular site, etc., is very different and very huge. No one taught us how to actually operate Meta today, but earlier Facebook, right? Can our systems be very, very user-friendly like what we are used to as customers outside in the environment? So that's another part which is also very key. The other part is also from a vendor selection standpoint, how adaptable, how actually robust the vendor is in terms of actually making sure that he understands our business proposition, both from a business standpoint as well as an HR perspective, that his solutions sit with us. His solutions are able to manage what the needs of the business are. Most of the times we have seen is that HR tech sometimes gets kind of seeped into what it typically calls system of records as opposed to system of engagement. We don't traverse that journey, and therefore there has to be a vision as to how do I look at a system of records and move it to a system of engagement over a period of time. The other part is also in terms of what exactly do you require from an employee experience standpoint, be it from an onboarding perspective, be it from an efficiency perspective, and be it from a different perspective, how do I drive different HR processes across. The other one, which is very, very key and important, like today, I mean, of course, there is nothing that I have XYZ opinion of an XYZ system, but typically, many HR systems dish out MISs only to a large extent, not analytics. And they, in the garb of analytics, they sell MISs. You have to be very sure and sharp in terms of what are they talking about. And I think that sensitivity, the HR profession has to be there to differentiate the two. That's an important part. Also, once you implement the change management processes that actually have to be going through, is the partners are going to support with that particular aspect. The other part is also maintenance and follow-up and any innovative solutions that the partner is going to bring to the table. Today, I think there are a lot of systems, maybe your organization is not ready for those, but typically is the partner ready to actually dive deep? And the partner is an innovative organization which brings very different things. And Rajesh, you alluded to a point which is right, because the partners are actually way ahead of where the organizations or where the industries. And if we as an organization don't have the capability and kind of the culture to adopt some of these dimensions, it could be a disaster in terms of what you're trying to get into. But I think if the partner is innovative, he brings to the table a lot of initiatives on the tech, from a tech platform standpoint, which probably you need to assess internally what we need to ought to do with that particular dimension. Also, the whole question around customization and configuration is a big debate out there, but typically you need to know what is the possibility of a configuration, or what should the possibility of customization or configuration, where many of the, I mean, I don't know, there are a lot of maybe cloud systems out here in this conference, but many of those systems don't come necessarily with a configuration ability. So you will be very clear about some of these aspects. Of course, your IT needs to be there with you, the executive team needs to be there. Typically, so from my perspective, these are some of the things which in my experience have gone favorably well, sometimes not done so well, but this is one of the takes that I have from my learnings.
Thank you, Adhir. The list was fairly large. I picked up strategy, I picked up leadership, adaptability and adoption, vendor experience, analytics and BI, and finally the user experience. I think those are some of the big dimensions that I picked up. And we're going to dive deep into some of those areas, particularly the last 3 or 4 that you mentioned as we converse. So I had actually thought I would ask Raghavendra to build on it. But Raghavendra, are there any other points besides what Adhir has mentioned that we should look at from a need standpoint that you would want to add? Because this list has been fairly exhaustive, but if you have something distinct, happy to hear.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh. I think what Adhir mentioned is a very, very valid question. It's like, are you ready with your strategy first and then looking at the vendor? So adding on to what Adhir mentioned, one thing that organizations should look at is the growth perspective. So organizations are built for growth. So whether your tech strategy will match up to your growth strategy, that is one very, very important perspective, because that's how you will kind of leverage the best out of it. And second thing is that as you grow, you generate humongous amount of data. And we at Reliance have experienced it. So whether your tech is capable enough to handle that kind of data volume and yet deliver the same kind of performance. That's second point. Third thing is that whether your tech stack is able to kind of give the performance and efficiency that you expect from. So there are several tools that, for example, how much is my processing capacity, how much is my speed, and those things. So that is something from the IT team to take care of. But one very, very important aspect is you're not only growing in numbers, you're also getting complex and diverse. So whether your vendor is able to manage your diverse set of needs, you are able to kind of get that flexibility to build those changes and enhancements. So as you evolve into your processes, whether your partner will be able to deliver the same to you, otherwise you're not able to kind of meet up to your expectations of your employees.
Thank you, Raghavendra. I think the stage is set for some of those points which Adhir and Raghavendra have mentioned that we're going to dive deep. And it's quite an exhaustive list. I genuinely believe that tech is no more enabling, but it's leading the change. And genuinely leading, so it's like putting the horse ahead of the cart. So tech is there. So how much you want to leverage, how much you really want to make the best of it is something that one has to really take a call. Yeah. So let's get on and dive deeper into this. So Diya, I turn to you for something which is again becoming a huge challenge. Now we spoke all the positives of this entire solution, selecting the partner and various dimensions with both of them did touch. But I think there's one more large theme that's emerging, which is the area of data security and protection. Yeah, it's a very hot topic in the world of today, and particularly from a tech solution standpoint. So what's your guidance on this particular dimension? And why I'm bringing it up upfront is many of us wonder or possibly are unaware of how to deal with it. Not that everyone has a perfect answer, but it's like really becoming large. It's scary at times. So how does one deal with this or keep this in mind? And also, I mean, feel free to say whether this is large enough at this stage or wait for it to evolve. Your thoughts.
Right. Thank you. So I think it does take us back to even the start stage. Security it really depends on your landscape as an organization. Are you, present across multiple continents across the globe? Are you an India-based? it takes up the entire security, compliance, various requirements. I think an important part that we made, which was made by the keynote speaker, is also today, what's your consumer experience? How are you treating data and security when it comes to the consumer, and therefore, how do you treat it when you look at your internal consumers as well? And this is how you set up, right? What are your pressing issues today? How do you set up your steering committee where you have the right people leading that thinking? How are you going to take the decisions, whether you need to align with a global office over there, or you're taking these decisions locally? And your steering committee's decisions on closing out security, integrations in case you're looking at it with ERP, I think these are going to be the important filters to take this forward. So if your steering committee is balanced, whether it's represented with the CFO, CIO, CTO, your CEO governing it, these pieces will get covered and become an important filter to selection as well.
Thank you. I think Adhir did speak about the entire exec team or the leadership team being, aligned and, sponsoring the entire change. And Diya did allude to the point around data security and protection also hovering around it. Thanks so much. I think there needs to be a huge kind of a commitment, the willingness to learn. But, what happens, and I want others to contribute. I mean, if there is a trip, or if there is an area of ignorance, or if there's something that you're unaware of, how do you deal with such situations? I'm sure all of us, day in and out, are not 100% perfect about data security and protection and privacy issues. And there are like new challenges that keep emerging on a day-to-day basis. Any one of you would want to add anything around this dimension briefly? Happy to take that.
Yeah, maybe I'll add. We all know that now the data is called the new oil, right? New oil of the age. Extremely important, and the way it has been happening, and now there is much more awareness about data and data protection. There are new laws which are coming. The Europeans are at the forefront in terms of these laws. But I think we've been, if you see the last 10 years, I think we've been learning by, by errors or by incidents. I know in my previous industry, there used to be some major breaches, and these were infrastructure companies where if you have a breach, then, thousands and thousands of people are at a, disadvantage. But even coming and projecting that to a retail or more so to the employees, I think there is a lot of sensitive data that sits. It could be about your demographics, it could be about your salaries or, whatever else. And then remember, these data are all interconnected. So it's not, we're not talking about one single source of data, but it's also connected. So somebody getting into part of, through one channel of the data into the organization, they also have the capability to access many other data. So I think data security to me is an absolute must. Almost whenever you do the evaluation, I think that is one of the key pillars. And going forward, as we integrate more and more, probably this becomes more and more important for us to make sure that there is nothing else. It's properly ring-fenced.
Thank you, Harsh, and for really emphasizing that particular point. So just a very quick, small question, and I think Adhir or you could respond to this. So is it becoming so large that, it's got to be integrated with the entire management team right up front? Or is it someone in the management team who's actually responsible for this? Is it the CIO? Is it the CTO? Is it the CFO? I mean, because it ties in a lot of stuff. There is fiduciary, there is governance, there is, bigger stuff in terms of the overall compliances. So who in the management team is actually, whose head is on the block?
Okay. So I would say the way the things are, it's the CTO. They are because there is a lot of tech stuff which is there. So you got to have someone who has the intricate knowledge of that. We on the sidelines might know the implications and might know the importance, but I think it takes someone to be who's at the helm of the affairs to know what exactly we're talking about, how the interconnections are there. So I would say a CTO is at the forefront when it comes to data security.
Yeah, I think with current systems available with multiple APIs allowed on systems, typically it becomes that much more critical that when you start integrating systems, the security breach can happen from many dimensions. So therefore, technically, CTO and the IT heads or the CIOs are very, very important to actually drive this, because a vendor sells to you a package or a system which is API compliant. I mean, it has APIs which can actually download data from multiple systems. And to that extent, it becomes that much more important to have security aspects strengthened across the entire system, so to speak. And actually, therefore, it becomes very heightened when there are multiple systems talking to a core system, so to speak.
Thank you. I think, you know, in the retail world, I'm sure there are a lot of interfaces also, besides the enterprise and the, you know, eventual consumer. There's so many middle blocks that you've got to deal with it. So I think thanks for bringing the importance. I'm going to turn to you, Seema, for the next question. And it's all about the point that we spoke about partners, the vendors or the partners. I like to use the word partners than the vendors. So in terms of, you know, how do you go about, you know, is it the credentials? Is it the ref checks? Is it the market ref checks? Is it the product demos? Is it the stability and their commitment to being in the entire process for a long term? What are some of those, you know, strong dimensions that you would look at when you go selecting a vendor or a partner? And also, you know, just being fair to the team, are there stuff which are like both the art and the science? While there are a lot of process stuff, how do you back your intuition also? For me, I think I back a lot of, you know, intuition when I was in the corporate seat, because you back a lot of things which comes out of the gut, you know, and that's inherent part of a leader's role to take those risks. So, you know, I hope you'll be able to do justice to this entire big question. Over to you, Seema.
Yeah, you got a lot of elements in the question there. But I think where we should start is by by understanding our own needs, right? I think the first and foremost, and you touched upon this in the first question itself, that what is really our need to actually bring in the HR technology, and how does it tie to our long-term goals? So, you know, we've spoken of growth in the panel as well. So, point is that we need to first understand where we are today, what is it that we need, what is the gap that we're trying to address through the technology that we'll bring in, because at this point in time, all of us are operating at a stage where we are using multiple technologies. Maybe an HR tech is required to come in and integrate all of those different processes and tools that we're using. So I think we need to start by understanding our needs and how it stitches into our long-term growth plans for the organization. When we look at that, I think, you know, a couple of points that you mentioned in your question itself, and what holds most importance, I think, is definitely going to be how some of our existing ERPs will be able to integrate, or not just ERPs, how will our existing systems be able to integrate easily into this new HR technology that we're trying to bring in. So, you know, does this system actually support seamless integration of data movement? You know, different data formats actually stitching into this HR technology that we want to bring in. I think that point will be most important. Of course, product reviews, hearing from people only adds on. And why that adds on is because, you know, there could be experiences that users have had which are probably not, which could probably be included in sales pitches by different partners, but have actually not been, you know, processes that have actually come through when a user uses it. So I think getting references, getting, you know, anecdotal inputs from different organizations does become critical, purely because we have many solutions and many partners that are available at this point in time. So I think to really get a real-time understanding of, you know, how their experience has been, I think that becomes very critical. And I'll take a small example of, you know, how talent management, for example, integrates into some of these systems. So when we actually test for systems, we test for a lot many things like leave and attendance, we check for performance management, we obviously check in for everything from a data perspective, you know, different columns feeding into our HR operations, and someone even mentioned that this shouldn't be like a record keeping mechanism. But the point is that, you know, how we say capturing a growth plan for an employee. So, you know, when we are building in some of these things, how well have we thought through going ahead? You know, if a person was supposed to move from an X role to a Y role in an elevation, how that career graph would look like on the system versus how they were supposed to move in from one function to a different function and how that movement will show up on the system. So simple tracking of different things and how some of the partners are able to enable that for us, I think that is something that you know, I'd like to evaluate when I'm looking at a partner. And I think those are really the things. Ultimately, the tool should help us you know, build in efficiency, and it should bring in better productivity in the system. So I think you know, just getting inputs on that, I think that's the one. You know, and rewards is another one which we constantly struggle with. I don't think, and you know, sorry to the partners who might be here, but we've really not seen a system that integrates rewards end-to-end, you know, into the HR tech we bring in. All of us have different requirements from a rewards perspective, and we've always seen something or the other missing out. So, you know, I think just having exposure to that, getting experience from, you know, experts in-house and also getting referrals from outside, I think those are some of the things that will matter a lot. Specifically getting, you know, a lot of user experiences and real-time scenarios.
Thank you. I think I can see Raghavendra wanting to add something to this, but I have some objective questions, but I'll hold till Raghavendra gives his views as well.
Just one more point to add. So whenever you are evaluating any vendor and going ahead, you do a thorough POC. So, and that would kind of give you the real experience. Don't empanel any vendor unless you have done a full POC cycle.
Yeah, I think thanks so much for the POC. Seema, you did say a lot of stuff, yeah? So the objective question is, what are the top 3 points that you would really give maximum weightage, and just 3 words for a partner selection?
So I think integration with other systems,
Okay.
integration with our existing systems, I think that's the first one. Market references and inputs of, you know, real-time scenarios. I think that's the second one. And the third is the whole credibility of the partner around data security and data protection.
Nice, 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 nice. So the other question is, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I just have one sentence to add here on market referencing. I think it should, you know, in my view, it should come at the end and not at the beginning. Because if you go and see, you know, look at the references, there are all kinds of references, good and bad. So, you know, my only point would be that, you know, once you do your internal evaluation, as you said, and then in the end you do the references, not referencing, not the other way around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the next one is a little leading question. I would expect all of you to raise your hands, but no, that's not the point. So I would want you to reflect a little before you raise your hand. How many of you are actually completely involved in the selection of a partner, or you depend upon your teams? Maybe your teams are very competent. So what's your level of involvement? If the level of involvement is more than 60, or maybe let me put 70%, please raise your hand. Otherwise, you know, if you have competent teams, it's good enough. So Seema says 70% involvement. I said I'm going to put you guys on the spot as well. Yeah, 7. Yeah, 3. Slowly, I think everybody is raising their hand, except Diya. Diya is holding back. So Diya, your views?
So I actually moved from being with a very large MNC to a startup. So I've seen both sides where we actually, and I'm going to go back to the question you asked, Seema, right? Where it was about revisiting your tech blueprint, not just from an HR lens, revisualizing what the org needs to look like, and giving that as an ask to the steering committee. Okay, and you're right, the CTO does have the neck on the line, because not only dialing in and guiding the team to what would be the best solution, and I think the top 5-10 preferences actually got shortlisted and then got brought to the table. And that's where the journey of involvement then came in, right? Of dialing into what solves your current problems and then helps you get to your ideal state. And I would say, therefore, my role wasn't on the 60% above.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think when we made a changeover from a very large ERP to a very localized, I mean, it's a cloud-based system, but typically a localized system. I think the involvement of the leadership team of HR and also the technology and the overall business was very high. So I wouldn't say that was lesser than 60% because there was a big change that happened from a very big ERP partner or vendor to a different system. So therefore the stakes were there and our necks are still on the block in terms of the selection that happened eventually. Yeah, so it's not that we're far removed from the entire process. And also the fact that if the leadership of HR doesn't hold this as one of their core and is delegated to a steering committee or delegated to a committee which selects, then I think you're not doing justice to your mantle in terms of actually looking at solutions which are going to be empowering line managers, employees, and the experiences are very different and heightened. So therefore, if it's not held even by the HR leadership of the organization, I don't think personally from experience I'm speaking, that systems will be taken very impactfully by your larger HR community and employees because they will see through you because they will understand that there's something, someone else is working and these guys are just kind of there to just bless the whole thing. But if they're not actively involved and not involving themselves in terms of actually what are my issues, what are my workflows that I want to have, etc., what is the heightened experiences that I want to give to employees, I think you have not done justice to this election.
Thank you. I think quite a lot of good builds. I want to add something which I see from the client world. I chair a B2B SaaS company called as HONO. And there are like new things that are coming into play. I'm not saying that it's really massive, but I guess there are like very, very unheard kind of stories or questions that are being put on us right now. And this is where tech solution really becomes important, you know. So we had a client who asked us, can you do through AI and integrate and predict the show rates of people who are going to join us? Lovely challenge to have, yeah? So while a lot of you would have done something around predictive attrition, we are saying predictive prospects who are going to join you, yeah, number one. Number two is predictive capabilities. So we know that this is what are the, you know, the proficiencies and the competencies that we really need to have. We're fairly clear. But can you actually bring in, with reasonable amount of probability of success, we are not asking you to be 100%, can you bring in predictability of the future predictives as far as learning is concerned? Number two, flight risk is a very, very standard ask, which many of them are asking because attrition is really a serious stability or a disruptor, either way that you look at it. I had one more, a very new ask, and this is where cognitives start to come into play. Cognitives maturity are like maybe about 15-20% at this stage, but you will hear more of this, and things which we never thought could have solutions. So somebody did say that in the performance management system, and Swami did speak about it, I think how many of us even read those forms, and is it even possible to read those forms, unless there is an escalation or there is a a debate that you want to build around a particular case. Nobody goes through it. Is there an AI solution that can really crawl and pick up all the information? Possible. But I'm going slightly beyond that. I think the question was also, how do you pick the unheard in the system of engagement? You're picking up everything that is being heard. You're picking up everything that is being said. You're picking up everything that is possibly being punched in social media as well. But there is a lot of data sitting inside an organization which is possibly not even spoken. It got me really, thinking, and I am working towards, writing an algo towards it. Not that, it's going to be easy, but nevertheless, I think these are some of those fundamental business challenges which are coming into play. Just thought we'll leave some of those and many more. Yeah, so a lot of uncomfortable questions are being thrown at as business issues, which we need to think of, besides some of those like huge set of stuff that the panel has spoken about. I'm going to turn to one guy who was really bold in this panel, and he said that, so while we were debating on some of the topic, we said that, can somebody take an, topic on ROI? And, promptly Aniruddha said, I'll take that. So I'm sure all of you, and I can see the smiles, all of you are often asked when you go for putting out a system there, your CEO will ask, or the CFO will ask, or the management team will say, what's the ROI on this? Yeah, why do we want to do this at this stage? Can you defer it to the next quarter or the next year? Is there something really that, something big? And can you show me some of the business deliverables? Is it going to change the entire KRAs of the leadership and the team below? Over to you, Aniruddha. You're a brave guy. Go
So-
ahead.
So ROI, like you said, Rajesh, is very difficult to ascertain, especially in an HR function where quantification in monetary terms is difficult. But there are a lot of things that can be assessed in a non-monetary manner. It can also be done in a monetary manner. For example, are there some things in compliance, recruitment that we were outsourcing, but due to implementation of technology, we have now started.
Aniruddha, can you hold up a little? Yeah,
Have,
voice is going
Yeah,
down.
due to implementation of technology, we have started doing it in-house, and that could lead to some cost saving. Are there any recruitment expenses or turnaround times that have been reduced? In terms of non-monetary measures, I think, is there a change in the employee satisfaction or engagement index? Do we have a higher ENPS? That is something that people look forward to. I think most leaders, business leaders, are excited to see people grow. And if there are outputs with respect to intelligence, and mostly predictive intelligence in terms of what is the potential of an employee, can we predict attrition, like you said? And these have phenomenal impact on the business. This gives us an insight as to what preemptive initiatives the organization needs to take so as to reduce attrition, improve engagement, and therefore have people work for us more dedicatedly. Third is, all of this leads to increased productivity. And increased productivity makes a direct impact on the bottom line of the organization. So these are the, I think, use cases or examples that we need to share with the business leaders and CFOs of organizations who will actually help us implement the HR tech going ahead. Yeah.
So thank you, Aniruddha. You're saying there are a lot of quantifiable matrices that can be built around this, and it is perfectly a doable exercise, and one should be ready with this as well, yeah, before you really get into a decision-making phase.
Yeah.
Is it a fair question? I mean, when people ask you, I'm sure others will want to react, but anyone with a quick reaction, I don't want a very longish one. Go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, no, I will just draw attention to the topic of this panel discussion. It says art and science. So while ROI is more science, I would say there is a large art part of it, which you can't define in terms of, returns, etc. So it's about culture, it's about transformation, it's about adoption. So that art part, I think we should not forget that there is a large art part of it as much there is science to it.
Fantastic. I think thanks, Harsh, for really bringing it out and balancing it out.
Just one last point, I think also around the intangibles is our overall improved employer brand. I think, that's another part that I'd like to add, that while we talk of culture, we obviously talk about the metrics that we are able to tangibly measure. I think there's also a direct impact that eventually happens on our, employer brand over a long-term perspective.
Thank you. I think very well said. While you go in for a solution, you really want to go through it, you're personally convinced. I think the ability to show out and put out a few quantifiable matrices will also help, because otherwise the HR system normally gets pushed when you go in for a tech partner solution, drive change. I remember in one of my roles, I primarily hail from the business and then moved into HR. So I took a KRA of really bringing down or contributing to EBITDA. Now, the first reaction was, how is an HR guy going to contribute to EBITDA? So I did demonstrate that by, working on experience density, releasing some of the over-experienced population in a few pockets, backfilling at the right stage. And all of this, I started converting to numbers, Aniruddha. So it actually started playing out when I told the, business head and the CEOs that, I've contributed 40 basis points to your EBITDA this year, to you 70 basis points. They said, demonstrate, and this is what I would demonstrate. And then the credibility started going up. So not that it's, unimportant. While we say that, the art and science needs to be managed, it is always good to be thinking about business value, because business has cyclicalities. They go through their ups and downs. And when the going is not good, the CFOs of the world or the CEOs of the world come first at training budgets and the HR budgets, which you need to stand up justifying, saying there is credit, there is merit, and there is business value. So if you're prepared on this, I guess it holds out.
Just from experience, I'm just narrating not incident, but one something which I thought is very important as a takeaway is that it's always better once you start selecting partners, etc., but also start thinking upfront as to what is the ROI am I actually going to deliver. Because it's not the end game, it's not an end story once you're selected, etc., but as you start in the planning process, what am I going to get out of the system is a very important aspect to actually lay stress on. Because most of the time, as you mentioned, that we get with our, sorry to use the word, pants down, because if you're not thought through it upfront. And if it's something coming out of my own learning that if you're not able to articulate a ROI, both qualitative and quantitative upfront, then probably it will get pushed back by the management team. And you'll find it very difficult to actually sell through a proposition. And that's where I think it's a very dedicated work, work which probably you have to sit back and reflect on what exactly you're trying to drive. Therefore, my first opening stance was, what strategy am I trying to drive along with the business, and what is there for my people agenda, and what is there for my technology how is it going to support? The whole linkage has to be drawn, therefore then you'll get some solutions and answers to your ROI question.
Thanks, Adhir. I think, we also need to tell you if you're, by any chance coming across as intimidating you, that's picture perfect, these are the, the checklist and this is the end, start to end kind of stuff that one should do, possibly the answer is not. I'll put something to test which I'll vote myself also. How many of us have failed in implementing systems? We started doing something and it did not come out to our expectations, or the adoption was not okay, or the system rejected it outright. I'm sure I'll be the first one, and I possibly failed quite a few times. So that's, I'm sure everyone will back this up. So the ability to also get up from failures when you're implementing something is also something one needs to keep in mind. Don't worry about it. None of us have, only success stories. I'm sure all of us have many, many trip stories as well. So that's perfect. Yeah. Okay. Scalability of a solution. Raghavendra, I'm coming to you. Is something that everybody touched upon in some form and shape. Number one is, it's not going to be a simple question, is scalability important? The answer is very leading. It's obviously yes. But how do you assess scalability of a solution? Number one, how do you really know that the partner is really right up there? Maybe Seema, you could add in if you thought through on that particular dimension post Raghavendra giving his thought. How do you measure scalability? How do you know that, the solution that you're implementing is scalable and the vendor is also equally ready?
So, yeah. So when you talk about scalability, there are parameters which IT itself is kind of partnering to test it out. So involve your IT to kind of test the scalability of the solution from a tech standpoint. So whether it can hold a large number of users simultaneously, so kind of a load testing. Check out on the response time. Then involve IT to kind of really look at their coding architecture and whether you can kind of scale up, scale down as you need. Of course, the cloud itself gives you a lot of capability in terms of scaling up and having parallel processing and those things. So those are the things which your IT team will be able to assess whether this tool is kind of able to do that. The next important thing is what we strongly recommend is that the tool that you're buying out or partnering with should be integratable with all your tools that are already existing. And more than that, it should be integratable with all your business applications. And so it's not just limited to HR, and that's what we kind of do it extensively, because with such a large volume of transactions that we hold, such a large employee base, we ensure that it is integrated not just with our HR tech systems, it is integrated with other business applications, and we build on businesses, and through this, we drive business. And that's how, when we mentioned ROI, and that's where you get the biggest ROI, that if you are able to drive your business processes through the HR tech system, and that is where you will kind of drive efficiency, productivity, manage scale. So you should look at not just from an HR perspective, but overall business as a whole. Yeah.
Right. Very well said. I won't summarize what you said, but I think looking at the bigger picture, the overall integration and the other stuff. Seema, my question to you would be on this particular stuff. Any experience where, you you have ticked one or two dimensions around scalability?
Yeah, I think largely, points that I would have liked to cover as well, which is complete involvement of IT, and not just IT, but also to test scalability, a lot of focus on user acceptance testing. So real users actually, going through the entire process, because sometimes as IT and HR experts, we are very well aware of what links to what. But real users, which is the employees, on how they will go through the entire journey, I think that's the other piece that I'll also add on to what, what he said. The other two things, I think, from a scalability perspective when we think of, is the adaptability of the system to change, or adaptability of that system to work on innovation. So if any of my business systems was to undergo a change, will the HR tech be able to adapt to that change at a later point in time? So while we definitely should look at how they will integrate right now, all our business and other systems, I think what the other point is going to be, how will they be able to change at a later point in time as well, is something that we should definitely build in. From a use case perspective, since you asked me, I think this is where we encountered how we've managed to scale this, is that our HR tech basically talks to our sales dashboards very efficiently now, which was a broken process, because we have frequent movement of manpower from one store to the other. So how do the incentives get calculated? How are their sales tracked on a day-to-day basis? We also have people who we've broken down into shifts. So, someone who's doing one shift at a particular store versus doing a second shift at another store, how do their sales get captured? So some of these things are very well built into our HR tech. So our HR tech, rostering, and our sales dashboards really talk to each other. And this was a broken link earlier because people's numbers were not getting reported out, because of this missing linkage. So that's the example that, I can quote from our real life.
Thank you.
Rajesh,
Thank you.
I just...
yeah, go ahead, Aniruddha.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think what we see in HR tech is it's constantly evolving and changing. And like we have earlier discussed that HR has to be integrated. Now, any HR solution that we take gets obsolete or gets redundant after every 5 years. If our HR tech is not able to adapt or evolve, the scalability question will always be there. Now, if the HR tech has the capability to integrate and it sits on top of another solution, then building up or scalability is possible.
Keep that in mind as well.
Otherwise, penetration, adoption, all of it goes down.
Excellent build from the three of you. Thank you so much. Harsh, I'm coming to you. For a slightly bigger topic, and allow me to compress two large themes into one question. So, little unfair, but nevertheless, let me take a shot at it. Is Gen AI a friend or a ghost in this entire story, number one? Number two is all about the world of analytics and BI and predictability. I mean, how much of all of this should weigh in this, complexity of decision making, etc. So your thoughts on this?
So I think in the ideal world, yes, the answer is yes. Everything has to be, these all has to be an integral part. But if you ask me where we are on that journey, I think the answers could be very different depending on which company you talk to. See, the journey started with the basic data processing, payroll, leave, etc., etc. And I think we are evolving. For a BI or a predictive analytics to work, A, you need a lot of test cases. B, you need a lot of data which needs to be fed in. So the logic has to be built. And I'll just give you an example. A few years back, we had a HR tech which has capability to predict the attrition of people. And for a country in Eastern Europe, we did that as a pilot, and then we went to the management saying that, listen, these are the top 10 people who are likely to go, and hence we need to do something for them in terms of retention or whatever. The moment they took a look at those names, the next moment it was just out of the window, because the data was, the data came out of some certain inputs, but I think those inputs were so static that it did not, the end result was, anything but correct. So the point is, I think AI, when we talk about AI, when we talk about the forecasting tools, et cetera, absolutely must, I think, from, for any HR technology, HRMS. But I believe that there needs to be a lot of foundational work which has to go behind that. So I don't think, my personal view, I don't think we should rush into it. Because to me, it is probably 4 steps ahead of us. So we got to climb those steps one by one, rather than just looking at that and then compromising or not doing something which we immediately need to do.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, Aniruddha.
Yeah, one more thing to add. When you look at AI, you just cannot buy off the shelf. Yeah. So that is where the problem lies. It needs to be contextualized to your organization. You need to train, you need to put a lot of hard work before you give it out to your employees. And that's what we had been encountering for last 2-3 years. We built our own in-house chatbot, conversational chatbot. It is a huge amount of work. So unless you have prepared yourself to kind of train, give that much time, use the technology to fit into your organization policies, processes, culture, people, what kind of insights you want to give. Don't deploy anything which is fancy looking and it's readily available outside. It may not work. Yeah.
So actually, just a use case in our organization, we've made a kind of a pilot in one of our, we are a conglomerate of sorts, so in one of our pilots, which is the lifestyle business, where we actually have, I'll not name the vendor because it's not going to be fair, but typically from a listening perspective, I think this tool has really differently given both from predictability, both from actually what exactly is happening on the floor, and somewhere the answer to a question, I mean, it's not necessarily getting up issues which are unheard of, but typically we're closer there. So that's something which we have kind of experimented is running well for that particular vertical. The larger question which you spoke about, Rajesh, is about predictive and prescriptive. I think my probably knowledge gap as well, probably. But I think most of the systems are at the diagnostic and descriptive level, to my understanding. People claim, as my opening remark was that many vendors, partners claim that they've reached that predictive and this thing. But when you start implementing, we find there are issues, troubles, exactly. And also to Harsh, there's also a problem that your own databases are not in order to pull up data from multiple sources, etc. Systems are not really geared to do that. So I think I'm yet to come across a system where you can actually pull up data, while some vendors do partners do kind of propose that they can actually pick up data and various data lakes that you have. But typically I have not seen systems which probably give that kind of comfort. So I think we are there, we want to do it, but sometimes this kind of work gets outside of the system. If a system gives that, that's what the desire would be of businesses. That's how I build a cockpit kind of a view for my leadership, which from predictive and even the prescriptive type, that's the end game that we should be looking at. But yeah, there is kind of a gap in the delivery and the expectations of the organizations.
Yeah, I would love to speak more on this. I think that's one area that I would possibly pick up with you on a one-to-one as well. Don't try to build the entire expertise in your own enterprises. There are enough and more which you can borrow from the marketplace. So the depth that we all used to build traditionally in the HR systems years ago is something that you can depend a lot from an expertise outside. So that's my word of advice. I'm not building it. I mean, I will possibly give a consulting solution around it. But Seema, I'll not ask you to add because you grabbed the mic. I'm just being conscious. This is just 8 minutes. So the next question, yeah, I'll possibly will ask you, because adaptability, adoption, integration. Yeah. What are the 2 words that comes to each one of you as words of advice or guidance? Yeah. No narrative, no description, because we can go on for the next 30 minutes. That's not intended. But if there are 1 or 2 words that comes around success of adaptability, success of adoption, and success of integration, which you want to leave as words that really match your thoughts.
I will say user experience.
Great.
Right on top for me.
User experience, 1 word. Go ahead.
Self-service.
Self-service. So you're getting all the words around adaptability and adoption.
I think scalability.
Scalability, great.
I think democratizing actionable data. So you actually solve for the push versus pull.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow,
if
nice.
I have actionable data, you solve adoption and your ability to actually build efficiencies into the system. So I would say democratizing actionable data.
Awesome. Awesome. Raghavendra, any one or two quick words that resonate?
Scalability and integration, I would say.
Scalability and
And
integration.
integration.
Integration is one of the themes that is in. Yeah. Okay.
I think from my perspective, it's both UI and UX. Because I sometimes find that the HR systems, UI sucks. I'm sorry, but that's where your adaptability becomes that much more difficult. And also what she mentioned is that how my data is going out for getting used.
All of you said all scientific words. Huh? There's
So I'll say
no words
some-
of art. Anybody will back intuition, belief, trust, values, anything around it?
Simple
No.
words, what's in it for me? I think that is, HR comes up with a lot of softwares, and in a previous organization, there was an app which was implemented, and the CEO said, oh, another HR app for my mobile. And then I had to say, no, it's going to be really useful, but unless it is something that they require, employees, managers, business leaders will not adopt it.
Awesome. We could have gone on and on with some more stuff. I'm sure, with a panel like this, we can continue discussing. But I think just being conscious, we have just less than 6 minutes left. Would love to take 1 or 2 or 3 questions if time permitting. If you can keep your question brief and don't build questions over questions and be sharp, I think we can possibly take even 3 or 4 questions. Anyone wants to ask anything around this topic? Oh, it's a very shy audience, huh? No one? Adhir, you failed, huh? You said that turn it to the audience. Okay, then I'm going to use the next 6 minutes. Huh? So how many of you really depend upon your teams, both at the decision-making stage, at the process selection stage, and at the product demo stage, etc., etc.? How many of you really involve them right from a beginning to an end state? Can I start with Harsh?
So to me, there are 2 or 3 functions or teams which are very crucial here. A is as a user HR department, of course, and within HR function you have then the talent and talent acquisition and so on and so on. The other piece, as we are all talking about, is the IT, because that's the backbone on which this all needs to sit. And the third, of course, is coming back to our ROI discussion, the finance or the commercial. I think these teams need to work hand in hand for a successful solution. It is not, HR will look from a user perspective, where IT is going to look from a scalability or integration perspective. But unless these 3 things come together, I think we won't have a good solution. So it's absolutely critical to have the teams, but the right teams to get involved.
Great. Seema, you wanted to say something?
Definitely involvement of all teams, very critical. I think beyond this, even involving business teams, because there are, other dashboards, etc., that we build into this. I think that's another piece that I'd like to add, which is apart from just finance, IT, and HR teams, I think the business teams also, because there's a lot of data analysis that happens in today's day and form. I think also involving them is going to be critical.
Right, right. The last topic that I want to touch upon is how many of you, because there is science and art in this topic, right? We touched a lot about processes and science. Art, we agreed, but we did not touch upon too many things. So how many of you would really back vendors, partners who have aptitude, just as you hire talent who show potential and back them? Similarly, partners who are like early in the infancy stage, showing promise, and who can become your long-term partners of choice, may not have all the wherewithal to really stand it out today, but can prove, how much do you back yourself, how much of push or how much of risk do you take in this particular area?
So, Rajesh, if there is a problem which is not addressed by current set of vendors, not addressed by established vendors, or it's a new problem in HR that for which there is no internal solution, definitely we tend to back them. There is also newer solutions that vendor partners give and which were not anticipated by organizations. So Therefore, to that much extent, yes, there have been trials and there will be a POC and adoption will continue to grow. And therefore, we see a lot of new vendors who are proposing newer solutions to HR tech.
I think 2 points. First is the fact that some of the newer vendors are more adaptable to change, which some of the larger ones might not be because they are working in different and larger organizations. And hence scalability sometimes restricts us choosing smaller vendors or partners. But yes, if they are adaptable to change and if they are open to innovation, I think that is something that will attract us and that will give them a one-up. And the second I feel is effective customer support. I do think, and we didn't probably touch upon this, but I do think that the post-sales part of it, which is once the vendor is, or the partner is empaneled with us, what is the kind of support that we get from them for all the daily concerns and issues that we face? I think that is also very critical in this entire process, and which at times when smaller vendors or smaller partners are starting out, they will be available for you 24/7. They will be able to change some of the things, etc. And so that effective customer support that we get from them, I think, is something that that will be an add-on through these.
Thank you. I think the only way to summarize, just less than a minute, I would do a word cloud around some of the stuff that at least I picked up. There was strategy, there was business objective, there was business alignment, there was proof of concept, which stood out, adaptability, adoption, business integration, data protection, ROI, value, matrices, and change management. I think this is some of the stuff that stood out. But over and above this, I think the ability to really back yourself, to getting the necessary leadership support, and really staying with high amount of tenacity and resilience to go through this is also something which is critical. So thank you so much. I think the easiest ways to do that was a word cloud. I possibly must have missed a few, but I think words that really stood out is what I picked up. Thanks so much. It was really wonderful being with you, and I learned a lot. Absolutely delighted to have been on this panel. And thank you, Rai, for having us. And the audience, somebody is raising a question. Do I have one question?
Anybody?
Do we take that? Yes. I'm glad at least we have one, yeah. But keep it brief, huh?
I will. Hi, I'm Saurabh. So sometimes I have a debate with my superiors when we are deciding that first we should launch the policy and the process and to be supported by tech, or first we should have a tech and the system in place, and then we should go ahead with the process and the policy. So just wanted to know the panel's opinion. What do they think?
You have a choice, because I know the question will go to home, but I don't want to bias it.
No, anyone, no choice.
So let me pick. I think there was an unwritten rule in the group that the difficult one will go to Aniruddha. Any difficult question, Aniruddha, you'll have to take it. Aniruddha,
I'm happy to hear that it's a difficult
So
one.
I'd like to be a little flexible on this. See, sometimes good vendor partners come up with brilliant processes, and you may want to tweak your processes along with what is established. Otherwise, there are some policies or processes which are very much unique to your organization. So then you should stick around to it and try to build your IT solution according to it.
I think the whole classical world of management will always tell you system should follow business. Whether it's a McKinsey model or any classical management, I would stick to that and say, system should follow business. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for the entire panel and for Mr. Rajesh Padmanabhan, most erudite moderator.